I was literally leaving work early because I was like, I want to get home and have my glass of wine. That was all I could think about.
You know where I come from. It was either you don't drink or you drink excessively. Don't hold back. Say it loud. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Don't Hold Back podcast. This is where we say it loud. My name is Nozibele Kamgana Mayaba. We aim to create a safe space for us to engage on topics that matter to us. Some of them may be a little bit controversial, but they are as equally as important. We do all of this with a little bit of a twist. I am a big foodie, and I have asked each of my guests to come in with food that we can share in studio. Today, we are talking about managing alcohol. What is a healthy way of drinking? It is no secret that South Africans love their strong drinks, okay? Every Monday when I hop on social media, there is someone that is vowing that they'll never touch alcohol again, and that is after a very heavy weekend, right? But then listen, there comes another weekend and it's the same cycle all over again. So what do you do in this case? We are joined by public speaker, author and coach Clive Vanderwagen, where we are going to unpack this topic further. Clive, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making it.
Thank you very much for having me, Nozi. It's great to be here.
Nice. Now, before we get into it, I did say, I'm a big foodie, and that is why I've asked each of my guests to bring in food. What do you have for us today?
Well, I feel a bit embarrassed if you said that you wanted, as a foodie. I didn't bring in anything foodie.
Okay.
I brought in, because we're talking about alcohol, I brought in my go-to alcohol stuff that I used to when I was a big drinker. Knickknacks. But it had to be the real knickknacks, not cheese knacks, not anything else, the real knickknacks.
Okay.
And that was my next morning hangover remedy. So I've brought that as a foodie for you to enjoy.
Okay, thank you. I see also there's some sweets next to it.
Speckled eggs.
Okay.
They were my choice when I was drinking. Instead of dinner, I would eat speckled eggs. So here on a platter, you have my alcohol foodie.
Can I be honest? That is very unexpected, okay? When I got the brief for the show, I was like, I'm so excited, but then also a little bit worried. I'm like, I do not drink alcohol. So please tell me that Clive is not going to bring in some kind of alcohol or beer or anything like that I have to try in studio. But then at the same time, I was quite excited in terms of what to expect. Now we're going to try the snacks a little bit later on in the show. Okay. But I have to get more of the story behind them. But let's talk about you, okay? Your whole career is about, getting the best out of everyone. So I have peers where they all believed, alcohol is bad. But then as we progress in our careers and now that we're much older, I get to interact with people now. They say, no, actually now I do occasionally have, a glass of wine. And I'll be so taken back and never understand, is it actually a coping mechanism because of work? Or it's a lifestyle that when you get to a certain stage in your life, it is very much, accepted that you need to drink. When you are in these circles, you need to have a glass of wine. Otherwise, you're going to be seen differently. And that's why it's always encouraged, even with functions that I go to. Why? I get looked so weirdly that I don't drink. So is it a lifestyle thing? Do you have to, drink? What do you have to say regarding that?
So it's interesting because the thing about alcohol is that it's a drug. So it's a toxin for the body. But it's probably the only drug where when you say to people, I don't want it, then people say, why? So if I had to say to you, I'm off heroin for the week, I'm cleansing.
I'll clap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Whereas if I say I'm not drinking, people think I'm strange. So it is something that in terms of society, it has become a kind of sense of fun is associated with alcohol. Celebration is associated with alcohol. There's all sorts of things that we associate with it. And if you're not partaking in that, it's almost like you're not part of the community because the alcohol kind of wraps up that community that we're a part of. And that's what's difficult about giving up is because it is often then seen as you're either not fun or people immediately assume that you've got a problem and they go to the alcoholic space as well. But I also want to add to what you said, because it's interesting, is when people kind of start off, when I was younger, I was also very like, oh, alcohol's terrible.
Yeah.
We would have the odd glass of wine as a family kind of thing. And then I went to university, and like all good university students, I had a great time with alcohol, but it was weekend kind of partying, as it went along. Then I got into magazines, and I was part of a wine magazine, and I started judging wine, and I started going to wine tastings, and it did become a lifestyle. Like, I loved the craft of wine. I still do. I think there's an art to wine, there's a craft to it, and to whiskeys and beers and all of those kind of things. But eventually what happened in my own journey was it became something where there was an emotional attachment. I used to drive home and I couldn't wait for my glass of wine. I'd have I've had a bad day or I've had a good day. I've just had a day eventually it became, and I'd have a glass of wine. So what became a now and then celebratory thing became an everyday occurrence. It becomes this slippery slope. And for some people, a bottle of wine a night isn't unhealthy for them. It's unhealthy in terms of the medical recommendations. But it becomes unhealthy when there becomes an emotional dependence, where eventually I was literally leaving work early because I was like, I want to get home and have my glass of wine. That was all I could think about. So
you know that you're saying that, I'm thinking of a story on social media about a particular musician that came out and said they have a problem with alcohol, and people were like, oh my goodness, she drinks a lot. And as she told her story, she was like, no, I realized that I have a problem after I would drink like a whole bottle in one evening. And people were like, you think you're an alcohol over one bottle of wine? You should try like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. But now it makes sense in terms of what you're saying, that it's not per se about the amount, but it's the emotional attachment. That for her, not having that bottle of wine was a problem. Now, listen, you have said in your work that you enjoy the challenge of helping others, but you've touched on what you call a healthy relationship, with alcohol. What is a healthy relationship with alcohol? You know why I'm saying that? Because when I grew up, and this is partly the reason why I never wanted to try alcohol, there was never a healthy relationship, where I come from. It was either you don't drink or you drink excessively. And you literally see someone on the side of the street at 5 a.m. in the morning. So I'm very interested in terms of understanding what is a healthy relationship with alcohol.
It's easier to answer that from what is an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, because an unhealthy one is any one where there's discomfort around how much you drink, what you drink, when you drink. So whatever that might be. So, we do have this picture of an alcoholic. That's an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. Is that, you're falling over in the street, that excess that you're talking about. But a healthy relationship with alcohol is one where you're mindful about drinking. So what happens is that, and it's difficult to be mindful about drinking, because the problem with drinking is it gets rid of mindfulness, because the more you drink, the less barrier you have to kind of saying no to more drinking. But a healthy relationship with alcohol is one where you are in a space where the relationship with alcohol isn't dictating how you behave, but you operate with alcohol in a way in which it's mindful and doesn't have any kind of sense of emotional or physical attachment to you.
Here's an interesting stat that I saw recently when I was, doing my research about this topic. It says, according to the International Society of Substance Use Professionals, alcohol remains the primary substance of abuse in South Africa. Between 7.5% and 31.5% of South Africans have an alcohol problem or are at risk of developing one. I guess when I read that, I'm like, okay, there's no clear cut between alcoholic or being sober, right? So what is a high-functioning alcoholic?
It's a good question. I suppose it's different for different people, but the high-functioning alcoholic is someone who is able to pass as not a heavy drinker, even though they are. So it might be... So I know, for example, I don't call myself an alcoholic. I'm a mindful drinker, if I do even drink. And it is very much a case of I knew I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. But that stat that you said is very interesting, because it's on their way to becoming an alcoholic. And that's what often a high-functioning alcoholic is it's someone who has a dependence, whether that be physical or emotional, but they're still able to maintain their jobs. They're still able to maintain their relationships to some extent. It is definitely affecting your work. Like I know if I'd have a bottle of wine the night before, even
That's what
2
I was going to
glasses.
ask. In terms of, did it change your lifestyle? Or how did it affect you?
Well, when I was drinking.
Yes.
So when I was drinking, the next morning would obviously be terrible. You wake up and you never feel great the next morning. After 2 glasses of wine, some people can feel terrible. I'd built up a tolerance eventually where I could finish a bottle of wine in a night and I'd be fine. I would just feel a bit crappy the next morning and, have a bit of a headache. And I'd wake up during the night and you get thirsty because wine dehydrates you. Well, alcohol dehydrates you.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have a great night's sleep, even though a lot of people think they drink wine to get them to go to sleep, but it actually wakes you up later. It's not a narcotic that puts you out. So the next morning you'd feel terrible, but by about 10 o'clock, you start functioning as if the day is all right because it all starts wearing off. But that emotional craving is almost that withdrawal. So it's not the alcoholic physical withdrawal, it's that emotional withdrawal that your body starts going, okay. So even though in the morning I would always say, I'm never drinking, I've got to stop this now. I'd get home and I'd be like, what's
just one more.
Yeah.
What, just one
tomorrow,
glass?
I'll start on the 1st, I'll start on Monday. And then, it was always became something.
Now that I think about it, obviously I can't relate to some extent because I'm not a drinker. I've never tried alcohol before. But then I understand because don't you think it's the same relationship that we have with food, right? Every time I'm like, okay, I need to go on a diet or I need to cut some sugar. And then I see some sweet. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to try this weekend. I'm going to try on Monday, right? And then Monday comes. I'm like, well, it's not the 1st, so I'm going to try the 1st of the month, right?
Well, it's exactly right. And it's what we were talking about before we started recording is that dopamine rush. So alcohol provides dopamine. So does sugar, so does food. I mean, that's why I loved speckled eggs and things like that. So that's why the alcoholism thing is tricky. And I always say there's a spectrum of alcoholism because it's exactly that. There's that emotional need for dopamine. So just like we get cravings for sugar at certain times. So some people, they have patterns that they get. So I know for some people at night, they want something sweet before bed, or some people around lunchtime, or if they feel afternoon kind of, that's when you're feeling down or, start getting your bit of your slump. They want some sugar, for example. But that's the brain wanting dopamine. And so it's exactly the same with alcohol. The thing with food is that obviously food is unhealthy in your body in a certain way, but alcohol is a toxin. So that's, and alcohol is also hugely addictive, as is food. Right. So they're both an emotional dependence, which could become a physical dependence. The physical dependence on food obviously is quite extreme, and you see those MTV shows, and, My 600-Pound Life. But the alcoholism one is a different kind of dependence and a different rush for dopamine. Okay. And the problem with South Africa, and I want to go back to that stat that you were talking about, is because South Africa has a hugely unhealthy relationship with alcohol.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was interesting when the pandemic struck, and they took away alcohol, and it reduced the amount of casualties in hospitals because we have such a drinking culture, and that's the thing about alcohol, is it ripples into everything else. So it ripples into your relationships, it ripples into the risks you take, and ripples into your working life. And it doesn't need to be to the extreme where people are collapsed the next morning. But it's people suddenly feel like, of course I can drive. Of course or they get aggressive and don't realize they're getting aggressive. And it has all these repercussions. And so that's the thing, is it starts off by us just craving this dopamine and this fun, but it eventually becomes something that emotionally we get addicted to, which eventually becomes physically addictive, just like food.
Can I ask something? This is for me personally. Now, I'm more of, when I taste food or when I drink, any kind of drink, there needs to be some kind of a nice taste to it. This is me personally, right? The one other thing that I've never understood is that, okay, so someone will be like, oh, no, just try. This is sweet wine and this is not actually bitter. You're going to like it. And what always put me off is the smell, right? And someone might say, no, it's an acquired taste. I've never, like, that's the one problem that I've had. It's similar to like olives. I don't like olives because of how they taste, right? And I know someone that will eat the whole bottle of olives because they're like, oh my goodness, it's like an acquired taste. They're so lovely. Is it the same with alcohol? It's just you have to get used to it. Actually, it's not nice. I've tried to understand like the psychology behind it. Why would you drink something that just doesn't taste nice?
Yeah, well, most people when they first taste alcohol don't like the taste of it. It has an immediate like over effect on them. It burns the throat because alcohol, it's a irritant for the lining of the esophagus into the stomach. So it has all these kind of repercussions in the body. But it is one of those things that we're almost taught to push through. In my family, I was taught to drink from a young age. We had wine, and we started off with Hanepoort wine, which is sickly sweet, delicious. I mean, it's like a sweet for a child. But that was because we were taught, and it was, I mean, with no offense to my parents, I mean, we knew no different. It was, sophisticated. We had to learn to drink wine, and we had to learn to drink. But I don't know of anyone who has drunk wine unless it's sickly sweet, and that's why the alcohol industry often adds in all of these juices and stuff to it. But alcohol on its own is foul. It's certainly not a pleasant tasting.
I thought I was being weird.
No.
Honestly, I was like, why is this putting me off? The smell is putting me off. I could never.
People who drink brandy, for example, you've got to hold the glass when you do brandy tastings, which I used to do. You've got to hold the glass about 30 centimeters away from your nose.
Okay.
And then pull it up to start until the alcohol burns your nose, because it's so alcoholic that actually what it does is it irritates the lining of your nose. It's not a natural substance for us to ingest. That doesn't mean it's not fun or it's not delicious for some or whatever it is, but it is one of those things that we do push onto people to say, even now that I don't drink, when I say to people, like, I don't want to drink because it doesn't make me feel good, they're like, oh, you just need to get drinking fit again. And I'm like, anything that you have to get fit to do that's not necessarily healthy for you, I'm not sure is a very good dialogue in our heads.
I like that. Now, Clive, I want us to play a game, right? So it's called Rapid Fire.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a question, and you literally have like 10 seconds to answer it, okay? So the first question is, you've got 2 hours. Are you chilling with friends or writing?
I am chilling with friends.
Nice. Okay. Consulting a room full of high-powered businessmen or ordinary people?
Ordinary people.
Okay. Favorite TV show or Netflix series?
Can only say what I'm watching at the moment, which is The Boys on Amazon Prime.
Oh, I'm going to try that. I don't know it.
So good.
Is it?
It's awfully gruesome and gory, but for all the right reasons.
Okay. Now listen, December in Cape Town or Johannesburg? I think I know the answer to this.
December in Cape Town.
I knew it. A park or a clothing range named after you?
A clothing range.
Nah, yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like being on people's skins. Is that weird?
I love that explanation. Right. After a tough day at work, what's your choice for a pick-me-up treat?
What's a choice for a pick-me-up treat? It would probably actually be ice cream.
Oh, what's your favorite flavor?
Oh, I love that Gino Giannelli double toffee.
Huh?
See, I'm even specific. I even know. It's not like I do it often, okay?
Okay, now listen, that was really quick. On a more serious note, how do we become better role models to our peers, in terms of drinking?
So I think the first thing has to be with people who are drinking is stop asking people who aren't drinking why and pressurizing them into drink, because that says more about you and your embarrassment of drinking. Because when I don't drink and you are, the reason you want me to drink is you actually feel bad.
Yeah.
So I'm making you look bad in your mind, because everyone knows that drinking, having a glass of wine could be fine, but getting horribly drunk is not attractive.
Yeah.
It's not nice. We mock people afterwards. We see social media videos of people falling over, all of those things. So The first thing I would say is that normalize not drinking. So if someone is not drinking, it's absolutely fine. But in terms of us who are not drinking to people who are drinking, I think what we need to do is just hold up a mirror to people. So what I do is I just say to people that there is another option. And I don't say to people, you must get sober. I just start, and it's what I do in my business is I speak mindfulness. I speak presence. I want to be present in my life. I want to savor every moment. Alcohol or too much alcohol robs me of that. And that's what I say to people is, do you want to be present? Because so often alcohol is about escaping the present. It's about wanting to step away from it. And I think what people need to do is start assessing how present they want to be in their lives. And look at not just alcohol, what else is there? Whether it's PlayStation, whether it's playing golf, whether it's watching TV and Netflix or whatever, binging, whatever it is, whatever's not making you present. Reassess in your life. Start looking at what could possibly be unhealthy from that kind of stance.
Do you think there are double standards between how we see men drinking and how we see women drinking? Because I've also seen or heard different debates around about, when there's a woman that's drinking whiskey, it's considered a very manly thing to do. You can't have women really taking a liking on whiskey. So when it comes to drinking, are there double standards?
Absolutely, but it's a very interesting discussion that you're bringing up, and I could talk about this for a while. But the alcohol was men's terrain. So when I was growing up, and I'm heading towards being 50 now, and when I was growing up, alcohol was for men. Women, you could have a glass of sweet wine, but it was the men used to drink beer and all of those things. And the alcohol industry went actively after women drinkers. And they went after, but they made drink for women. So, the brutal fruits and the sweeter stuff became for women. So there is still the stigma around kind of what you drink, that there's certain terrain is for women and certain terrain for men. It's being lessened even more so. But if I can also bring in terms of what I saw from working in magazines, is I actively saw in South Africa the alcohol industry go after black drinkers because, especially the wine industry, because wine wasn't really a drink of choice for black people. Beer was
only beer, correct.
Back in kind of early 90s or in the 90s around there. And they started hosting things like the Soweto Wine Festival. And then it became a thing that my black friends were starting to drink sweet wine. But now it's become a thing that wine is seen as this prestige to drink. Champagne, and often we'll go out and it's the best champagne that can be there. But there's been an active marketing to try and get people who wouldn't normally drink certain drinks to drink them. And that's been women, various communities in South Africa. It really has been quite targeted. The marketing around alcohol is massively impressive. And that's why there's been so many fights to keep alcohol advertising because it is so lucrative for the publications and press out there.
Last question from my side as we wrap up the topic, Clive. Just three things, just as a checklist for someone that is listening to this episode and thinking, well, I don't have a problem. I have a healthy relationship with, with alcohol. I can manage it. What would you say, just a checklist in terms of if you can just consider these things and start thinking about your own relationship with alcohol and start reevaluating whether you have a problem or not, what will be those three things?
So I would say the first thing is the medical advice in terms of alcohol is that you shouldn't be drinking more than 1.5 bottles a week of wine. And obviously what that equates to in terms of beer, so it's about 2 beers in a week or 3 beers in a week, and then whiskey at obviously kind of a third of a bottle. So if you're drinking more than that, you are stepping into unhealthy territory. So that's just in terms of physically being unhealthy. Then if I had to say to you, can you quit a day in a week in a month?
A weekend as well.
A weekend, yes. Yeah, choose a weekend. Yeah, so a week, so Saturday.
Yes.
A day in a week in a month, and a month in a year.
Wow.
If I say that to you, that's what you need to do, And that creates a sense of dread or a bit of worry of, can I do that? You potentially have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. That's a very easy. I mean, there's many other ways. It's in terms of if emotionally, there's obviously if you're getting the shakes in the morning, you've got a problem, but if you are pretty much getting home and salivating for that glass of wine or your beer, you might be, developing something unhealthy.
Let's get into, my food tasting or snack tasting. Going back to what you said, what is it about the chips or the knickknacks? Tell you what, usually, now this is for me following, people on social media. They always say the best thing to cure a hangover is like chicken licken. With like extra spicy sauce, and apparently that's good enough. But you lean towards knickknacks?
Yeah.
Like, was it the flavor? What was going on?
Do you know they actually serve the same function as what chicken licken does?
What is it?
So most people actually say also cream soda, which is it's called the green mamba. So that's when I know I was with an Uber driver, and she was saying that every night when the kids finish partying, she has to drive them to McDonald's to go and get cream soda and chicken nuggets. So, but also chicken lickens, huge, all of those things. But it's because they're greasy. So what happens is your stomach, there's an irritant in your stomach, and what eases the irritation is the oil. So even with knickknacks, they're oily, and it's also quite high in carbohydrates. So even chicken licken, the sauce, is sugary. You've got all of those things. So people often want the chips with it as well, because that's why they say have a greasy breakfast the next morning. Because they think it absorbs the alcohol, but it doesn't. All it does is it just stops the irritation that's happened in the lining of the stomach and the esophagus, etc.
And then while you're drinking, you said you liked the sprinkled eggs. Was it the sugar?
I don't know. I think it was just weird. I have no idea, but I would go home and sometimes I would buy a really big packet, like a party pack.
Yes.
It's meant to be for a party of 30.
Yeah.
I would finish them all by myself.
No.
And then the next day I'd be like, I must stop drinking. I must stop speckled eggs. Which one am I going to pick?
Okay, listen, I tried to be off sugar, but then I have an excuse because I'm hosting this show. I need to try. Okay.
Yes,
the speckled eggs.
No
I'm going to try
judgment.
this. No judgment. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to try the speckled eggs, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And then just a handful,
of
just a little bit of the knickknacks. Let me do that now. Are you going to try with me?
I will try with you.
Okay,
yes.
let's do it.
Okay, fantastic.
Because I knew you said you were afraid, or you got off, the sweets and the knickknacks. But today you're gonna try.
I will try. So I got off all of those, and I got off alcohol. And when I got off alcohol, I stopped eating these, and I lost quite a bit of weight.
Nice.
So that's why I haven't gone. So this is the first time I'm actually going to have a speckled egg since my drinking days.
No.
So we're gonna break through now.
And how many years is this?
So it's been about 2 years now. So yeah. 2 years since I decided to stop drinking. I'd kind of lessened drinking.
Okay.
And then 2 years since I stopped drinking. I always say it's been 2 years since I've been sober, but I have had a glass of wine since then. But it's been a mindful choice to have a glass of wine. But it's not something that because I don't necessarily want to advocate to people and say to you must stop drinking, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But I do think you need to assess your relationship with alcohol is what I'm all about.
Okay.
So let's eat the speckled eggs.
Let's do this. I'm going to try the knickknacks first. My word.
Probably this podcast, you're going to sound like those ladies who do the scratching on the mic. Yes. Yeah.
I've tasted the knickknacks. It's really good. I'm trying not to go for the second one. Okay. And guys,
wow,
it's so
they are
rich.
delicious.
They are, and they're so fresh. Okay, let me try the speckled eggs now.
And you even get, for those of you who are listening, you now get vegan speckled eggs. In case you are worried. Yeah, they are so good.
Do you taste the difference though? Because I never understood this vegan thing.
No, you don't taste the difference at all.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to go in and try them out. Okay, listen.
Oh, deliciousness.
I know, right? How does it feel after 2 years?
Now I need a glass of wine. No.
Listen.
I can feel the calories sitting right on my belly.
To me, it's going straight to a place that I did not want it to go to, but it's okay. Okay, Clive, this has been an eye-opener for me. I've learned so much. Thank you for coming through, sharing your own story, sharing, your own experience. Once again, I know for a fact that this is going to bring about a lot of debate, on social media. When you said, if you start drinking, 2 beers or 3 beers, I thought you were going to say a day, but you just said a week.
A week, yeah.
Well, we're going to see what people say on social media.
Yes. And that's over a week, not in one night, so that's the thing, because that's binge drinking. So, yes.
I am looking forward to you engaging on social media. What do you think about what Clive is saying? Okay, do you have a problem? Do you have a healthy relationship with alcohol? Yeah, just let us know your own experience about anyone, even in your circle. It doesn't even have to be about you. But this is where we leave it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Don't Hold Back podcast, where we say it loud, a partnership with Deutsche Welle, Jacaranda FM, and East Coast Radio. Please catch this episode and many other episodes wherever you get your podcast, and also on our YouTube channel. This is Nozibele Kamgana Mayaba. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, bye. Don't hold back. Say it loud.